I had wandered the common streets for 13 years before they found me and brought me home. To make amends, my father, the emperor, and mother, the empress, granted me the privilege of choosing my own consort. Ministers, eager to curry favor, presented several young men from prestigious families to the palace. Without exception, I dismissed them all. I demanded Peyton, the eldest son of the Ashford family, that recently widowed gentleman who had broken our engagement 2 years prior, leaving me to face the streets alone. He was the very man who had caused my downfall. On the day I went to find Peyton, the Ashford manor was draped in white mourning banners. There he knelt in the memorial hall, cradling his late wife's spirit tablet in his arms. Even in his simple posture of grief, he possessed an otherworldly elegance that stirred something dark within me. A desire to see that perfect composure crumble, I handed the imperial decree to a nearby servant and gazed down at him from my elevated position. His kneeling form remained perfectly straight and proper. I settled myself on the meditation cushion beside him, my voice taking on a mocking, playful tone. "What is this? Don't you recognize me anymore?" Peyton kept his eyes averted, his voice cold and distant. "Why have you come?" I toyed with my fingers, pleasure evident in my voice. "Oh, nothing much. Just here to deliver an imperial decree." The trembling servant began to recite. "Peyton Ashford, eldest son of the Ashford family, possesses noble character and distinguished bearing, making him a worthy match. His Majesty's second Princess Aurora is gentle, virtuous, and renowned throughout the realm. These two are perfectly suited by heaven's design. His Majesty hereby grants Peyton Ashford the position of consort to Princess Aurora, to be wed on an auspicious date." Peyton's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with fury and disbelief. "Have you lost your mind?" I stared directly into his gaze and caught something unexpected there. Regret. How fascinating. I rose gracefully, ignoring his outburst. "Well then, my dear consort, you'd best begin your preparations." The manor was still shrouded in white, mournful music echoing through the halls. Servants mourning his deceased wife. Yet soon, my princess residence would be adorned with festive red lanterns, filled with celebratory music for 3 days without cease. This realization brought me immense satisfaction. I smiled as I spoke. "It seems dear Sophia didn't have my good fortune. Do you suppose this is heaven's will?" Peyton let out a bitter laugh, his face transforming from shock to cold mockery. Where once I had cherished that unruffled composure of his, now it filled me with loathing. I prodded him further. "Sophia stole what was mine before. Now that she has met this fate, wouldn't you say the heavens have eyes?" Peyton could no longer maintain his serene facade. Through gritted teeth, he hissed, "Princess Aurora, please show some dignity." Dignity. I had forgotten the meaning of that word long ago. I leaned down, lifting his chin with audacious familiarity, my voice light but threatening. "My dear consort should think carefully. Your defiance of an imperial decree would mean only your head, but your wife died bringing your child into this world. That little one wouldn't survive either." I studied his expression with keen interest. How deliciously complex it was. On our wedding day, the ceremony was magnificent beyond measure. When the evening of our wedding night arrived, Peyton's patience finally cracked. I laughed softly. "Why such haste, my dear husband? I am not going anywhere." Peyton turned his head away in disgust. I lifted the ceremonial wedding cup and offered it to him. "Come, let us drink together as proper newlyweds should," he sneered, pouring the wine onto the floor. "A ceremonial drink. How are we worthy of such tradition? We were married in grand ceremony with proper rites. How are we not worthy?" Peyton's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Gentle and virtuous, renowned throughout the realm. Princess Aurora, what a magnificent performance you've given." So he knew I was acting. Then my performance needed to be more convincing. I burst into laughter, making no attempt to hide my amusement. My dear husband knows me so well. After all, we had grown up together for 13 years, childhood sweethearts in our own way. Can you guess what else I've done? As my words faded, Peyton's body began to sway uncontrollably. He stared at me in disbelief. You've drugged me. I clapped my hands in rhythm, counting down. 3, 2, 1. Peyton collapsed as if on cue. His eyes burned with rage as he looked at me, yet his hands moved beyond his control, tearing at his own garments, his expression a mixture of restraint and torment. I knelt beside him, stroking his face. Muscle relaxant combined with aphrodisiac. Do you like my little gift, darling? You truly disgust me. These were the first words from Peyton as he awoke to find himself bound to the bed. Hearing that name gave me pause. After 2 years, hearing it again filled me with such bitter hatred. Penelope, the Ashford daughter-in-law. I had been the little beggar he brought home. The future wife raised by Mother Ashford herself. I tore open his clothing with a gentle smile. Since my dear husband remembers that name, he should honor our betrothal. He struggled with all his remaining strength, his breathing labored and heated. Never, his cold, refined features were filled with fury, as if he wanted to kick me away from him. Yet his efforts had no more force than an ant's scratching. Truly befitting the scholarly prodigy the Ashford family had invested everything to cultivate. Cold and distant, he didn't even know how to curse properly. Princess Aurora, I am in mourning for my late wife. I beg you to show mercy and release me. Peyton spoke through clenched teeth, his face filled with humiliation yet strangely resolute. What a devoted widower indeed. My grip on his wrist tightened suddenly. For a moment, I was tempted to wrap my hands around his throat. I smoothed my robes, the sleeve brushing across his face. Peyton noticed the scar on my left shoulder and froze in shock. That scar ran from front to back, deep enough to expose bone. I watched his stunned expression and slowly began to laugh. This was nothing. 2 years ago, that fresh wound had nearly cost me half my life. I smiled, meeting his gaze. Peyton, if you have any conscience left, don't resist. Peyton closed his eyes in resignation. I chuckled softly and leaned down to kiss his throat. Afterward, I dressed myself alone. Before leaving, I turned to him with a final comment. My dear husband, we were childhood companions. Given that bond, as long as you behave as my proper consort, I will love you always and forever. Peyton's lips curved in a mocking smile. Princess Aurora's love is like rotting refuse to me. I felt no anger whatsoever. But darling, your love is like spoiled scraps in a beggar's bowl to me. Peyton stared at me coldly, filthy yet life-sustaining. Father summoned Peyton and me to the palace for his birthday celebration. I sat drowsily before my dressing mirror, exhausted and barely conscious. In my half-awake state, my mind unclear, I accidentally called out a different name. Marcus, why haven't you come to dress me yet? My maid looked shocked, keeping her head down as she whispered, Since your highness quarreled with him and dismissed him, there has been no word of his whereabouts. I remembered now, a quarrel. It had been merely my one-sided scolding of him. I drummed my fingers on the table, saying nothing. The maid bit her lip and ventured carefully. Your Highness, Marcus was merely a lowly favorite. Now that you have a proper husband, for the sake of harmony in your marriage, it would be inappropriate to mention him again. I smiled slightly. What a pity. Marcus's looks could rival even Peyton's beauty. The same proud aloofness, the same expressive eyes that seemed tender, even when looking at a dog. Compared to Peyton, Marcus possessed an additional touch of youthful spirit. But he wasn't Peyton, so he couldn't solve my predicament. That day when I lost my temper, my nail guard sliced a deep gash across his face, and I had demanded, Tell me, who in this world would dare not love me? Marcus said nothing, looking at me as if I were mad. In my fury, I banished him from the residence. After all, he needed to make room for my dear Peyton. I responded dismissively. Very well, let Marcus disappear forever then. At the banquet, wine flowed freely among the guests. Peyton sat beside me, eyes downcast, lost in thought. I rose to step outside and encountered my elder sister, Princess Evelyn. She and I had never gotten along well. Aurora, father and mother may not have seen that scar on your left shoulder, but I have, she said, stopping to press her finger forcefully against the old wound, her eyes vicious. Penelope, you really are pathetic. The Ashford family treated you so cruelly, yet you remain obsessed with Peyton. I jerked away from her touch. Sister, when I was dying in the streets, only Peyton was there for me. That woman bewitched him with her charms and stole him away. Now that she is dead, Peyton can only be mine. Evelyn stamped her foot in frustration. Aurora, you are beyond redemption. No wonder father and mother grow increasingly indifferent toward you. You are like mud that can't be shaped into pottery. I smiled inwardly while maintaining my facade. Sister needn't trouble herself over my affairs. As I turned to return to the hall, I glanced back and added precisely the right words. I love Peyton, and if sister opposes me, so be it. But if you speak another word against him, I'll have to seek justice from our parents. Aurora, when our parents arrived, I was sitting below drinking wine with my left hand firmly grasping Peyton's, unwilling to release him even for a moment. He frowned repeatedly, trying to shake me off, but I only gripped him tighter. Father's stern, imposing gaze fell upon me with evident disappointment. Mother exchanged a glance with him, shaking her head with a sigh. I understood their meaning perfectly. Their second princess had married beneath herself to a widower, and worse, a man with such an unseemly history with me. I laughed bitterly. I raised my wine cup, clinking it against Peyton's. The wine rippled, reflecting my slightly obsessive gaze. Peyton remained completely motionless. I knew he would never lift that cup to drink again. I smiled down at the wine. Peyton, all these splendid surroundings, all these people bowing their heads without me. Could you have witnessed any of this? Peyton had reached his absolute limit, his hidden fists trembling with suppressed rage. He poured out his wine onto the floor, refilled the cup, and drained it in one gulp. My thanks to Princess Aurora for this humiliation. Marvelous, absolutely marvelous. I clapped my hands in delight, tugging at his sleeve. Oh, my dear Peyton, earlier sister asked me why I insist it must be you. If she could see you now, drinking this cup with me, she would understand completely. She might even try to steal you away, to force you. Enough. Penelope, you are completely insane. I hastily covered his mouth. Darling, I've made you angry again. Please don't be upset. Peyton slammed his fist on the table and stormed away from the feast. I couldn't care less about father's dignity or royal propriety. I stood up immediately, lifting my skirts to chase after him. Peyton, darling. It is my fault. Behind me, father's rage erupted as he hurled his wine cup to the floor. Once outside the hall, I stopped and walked in a different direction. Aurora. I turned. It was Evelyn. How far will you go to disappoint our parents for the sake of one man? They once cherished you, but you publicly demanded that marriage decree, behaving so shamelessly. You've made them. I looked at her coolly. This true princess, raised in the palace from birth. This genuine daughter of royal blood. I smiled softly. What would you understand? She threw a golden medallion at me. This is the immunity token father gave me for my birthday last year. If you have any backbone left, go kill the Ashford family. I'll guarantee your life. I fingered the medallion that symbolized imperial authority, remembering how my birthday gifts from our parents had been delayed by a full day. I smiled with bitter irony. Dear sister, how could I bear to harm Peyton? That evening when I returned home, Peyton erupted in fury. Since you returned to the princess residence first, Why put on that devoted act? Who was that performance for? I blinked innocently. But darling, you left first. Why are you returning so late? Peyton remained coldly silent. I recalled the attendance report that Mother had searched for me extensively when she couldn't find me, leading everyone in a lengthy hunt until my message reached the palace. I smiled, watching Peyton with amusement. Darling, did you also search for me for a long time? Were you worried? Peyton laughed as if hearing the most ridiculous joke. Her Majesty the Empress commanded it. I dared not disobey. I dropped my smile, my interest waning. Peyton, I am pregnant. His gaze froze on me, taking a long moment to process my words. What did you say? Unfortunately, I saw no joy of impending fatherhood in his eyes. I spoke matter-of-factly. Don't entertain any foolish notions. Your daughter with Sophia is still in my custody. Peyton pressed his lips together tightly, his patience stretched to its breaking point. Princess Aurora may rest assured, I haven't sunk so low as to harm my own child. I smiled coldly. Good. When Alexander turned 1, he was bright and adorable, quick-witted and articulate. By age 2, he could already recognize many characters. At 3, Peyton could no longer ignore his exceptional talents and began personally teaching Alexander to read. When Alexander turned 4, he developed an interest in horseback riding and archery. Peyton promised that once he mastered riding, they would go hunting together. The day before Alexander's 5th birthday, I entered the palace to request a decree from our parents. They agreed, and my plan finally came to fruition. On Alexander's 5th birthday, Peyton and I took him hunting at the royal preserve as promised. I had arranged beforehand for the inner hunting grounds to be sealed off, leaving only the outer areas for hunting rabbits and pheasants. In the freezing snow, I personally prepared an elaborate birthday feast for Alexander, eagerly awaiting his return and anticipating our future together. But what I never expected was that instead of my living son, they brought me his small cold body. This hunt was restricted to the outer grounds only. Why did Alexander venture into the dangerous inner preserve? I held Alexander's tiny corpse, screaming in anguish. Peyton knelt on the ground in devastation, reaching out as if to touch Alexander's body, his eyes red-rimmed. It was my failure to watch him properly that led to. His voice cracked. I stared at him coldly and struck him hard across the face, his hair falling loose from the force. I carried Alexander's body away without looking back. The second princess's legitimate son, dead on his 5th birthday, from an accident. I wailed over Alexander's corpse for 3 full days, having never felt such overwhelming darkness in life. My heart seemed to die along with Alexander. That decree, after much deliberation by our parents, was revoked. For an entire year, I refused to see Peyton. I secluded myself in the Sephora Pavilion, unwilling even to see our parents. I heard that Evelyn had stormed into the princess residence with a sword, attempting to kill Peyton before being restrained by guards. I didn't attend her wedding. Her new husband was the renowned General Song, destined to return to the frontier in 3 years to serve for life. Our parents had originally opposed this marriage, but Evelyn's stubbornness had turned her into an aging princess before she finally married General Song as she wished. That year I turned 27, the age when I should have been raising children alongside a devoted husband. Manny said I had gone mad that year, more so than ever before. Previously, I had been seen as the foolish second princess who seized what she wanted regardless of propriety, earning father's displeasure. Now I had become the madwoman who imprisoned her consort, directed her sister to attempt murder, and nearly perished in the Sephora Pavilion. Even our parents rarely mentioned me to outsiders anymore. I had indeed gone somewhat mad. In the deep of night, my heart would burn with torment, and I couldn't help but laugh maniacally. I refused to let these stories spread beyond the palace walls. I suddenly remembered that rainy day 10 years ago when the Ashford family cast me out. The rain fell so heavily I could barely keep my eyes open. Just the day before, I had saved Peyton's mother from bandits. Yet she showed no regard for my injuries, as she expelled me from their home. Sophia appeared before me, offering an umbrella, bending to shield Peyton from view where he stood not far behind. She smiled with gracious warmth. Penelope, when Peyton and I came together, he was severely injured and had lost his memory. In truth, both he and I have wronged you. She held the umbrella toward me. Take this umbrella and never return. Sophia remained clean and composed beneath her umbrella, truly worthy of being called a pure, untainted hermit physician, while I sat filthy and muddied like a beggar. Peyton had met with disaster in the mountains, and she had saved him. I had searched for Peyton for 2 years, thinking he was dead. As she turned to leave, I weakly grasped her robe, abandoning all pride to plead, "Dr. Sophia, you are a healer. Please save me." Blood seeped from my left shoulder beneath my dark clothing, mixing with rainwater until they became indistinguishable. Peyton's mother pulled Sophia away. "Penelope, you must go. My son simply doesn't fancy you. Given that you took a blade for me, I won't demand repayment for raising you all these years. Now go." I smiled bitterly. I had worked as a servant in the Ashford household since childhood. Where would I get money? I collapsed to the ground, too cold to form complete words. "Save me, please." Before losing consciousness, my vision fixed on Peyton's retreating figure as he turned away without hesitation. I had served his future mother-in-law dutifully for 13 years in the Ashford household, growing up alongside Peyton in mutual support, only to meet such an end. I began going mad from that day. Though what truly drove me to madness was far more than just this betrayal. Peyton never learned the truth. Apart from me, no one else knew. On the day I returned to the princess residence, Mother sent an exquisite jade pendant through her servants. I played with it in my hands before wearing it at my waist, that very evening. I gave it to Peyton. In our childhood, Peyton and I had indeed been close companions. He taught me to write, defended me from others, and pleaded with his mother on my behalf when I was punished. I accompanied him in his studies, stayed up late helping him review, and walked with him to and from school. Back then, everyone said Peyton's little wife was a clinging vine, always following him around. 10 years ago, the Ashford family was still known as an impoverished household. Only after Peyton achieved scholarly success did they build their manor. "My dear husband has learned to be so well behaved," I observed with satisfaction. His eyes were bright and clear. "Aurora, I want to see little Lily." I smiled radiantly at him. "Of course, come to think of it, she must be nearly 8 years old now." Peyton nodded, his eyes bright with joy. "Do you remember that our Alexander would have been 6 by now?" The joy vanished instantly from his eyes, replaced by cold darkness. "Aurora, Alexander is dead." I withdrew my hand with a laugh. "Don't get upset, darling. Tomorrow I'll have her brought here. Such a small matter." To please me, Peyton personally fastened the jade pendant I had given him to his waist. "We'll have more children." I smiled without responding. "Peyton, do you know that when you lie, it is quite obvious?" Peyton pressed his lips together, saying nothing. The next day, I kept my word and brought her to him. The little girl was as precious as snow and jade, bearing a face identical to her mother's. The moment Peyton saw her, his eyes reddened as he held her tightly. "Lily, my little Lily." Though 8 years old, the girl appeared no taller than a 5-year-old child. To observers, it might seem I had mistreated her terribly. Peyton's eyes turned cold. I waved dismissively. She was confined for so long in the womb. Naturally, her constitution is delicate. You should thank me for caring for her as well as I have. A flash of hatred crossed Peyton's eyes. Lily took a fancy to the jade pendant at his waist, clutching it and refusing to let go. Peyton looked at me while protectively holding his daughter, as if fearing I might punish the child over the pendant. I laughed mockingly, walking past this scene of bitter reunion without another glance. After Peyton and little Lily shared a proper meal together, I had her escorted away. The guard reported that night that Lily had taken ill. She had fallen into a poisoned stupor, beyond all medical help. The messenger hesitated before asking whether the consort should be permitted to see her one last time. I smiled with cold irony. Of course, he would not be permitted. For 3 consecutive days, I sent people to investigate the cause of the poisoning, but they found nothing. The only thing we could rule out was that the poison had been administered neither during her journey to the palace nor on her way back. How fascinating, how very fascinating indeed. I appeared to be the prime suspect. When I next saw Peyton, he had grown gaunt, his complexion poor. My gaze fell to the jade pendant at his waist, and a chilling realization began to form in my mind. I asked him, "Have you been wearing this jade pendant close to your body these past few days?" Peyton paused. "Indeed I have." I dug my nails into my palms to keep from going mad. I started to walk away when Peyton called from behind me, "Aurora, let us live peacefully together." I stopped, stunned that Peyton would go to such lengths for his daughter's sake. I turned back with a smile. "Darling, I've wanted to live peacefully with you from the very beginning. Only now, everything had been destroyed." Peyton pressed his lips together, and after a long moment barely managed to speak. "I was wrong before." My heart turned cold. I wanted to tear away his mask of pretense with my own hands. Very well. But I would not grant him his wish. Princess Aurora, bewitched by obsession, gathered numerous male favorites and spent her nights in drunken revelry. When Evelyn visited, she found me amusing myself among my collection of attractive men. She drank with me, gesturing at my room full of favorites, speaking with rare kindness. "Aurora, this is the right attitude. That Peyton is no good bird. The forest is vast. Why hang yourself on his particular tree? Why fixate on that particular bird?" She drank herself unconscious. "Evelyn, congratulations on your marriage." I raised my cup and stumbled to a peach tree. I vaguely remembered the Ashford estate had such a tree, where I often picked peaches as a child. Mother Ashford forbade me from eating them, so Peyton would hide several away, smiling as he secretly gave them to me. How wonderful Peyton had been in those days. Why had he become so hypocritical, breaking our engagement? Why had he changed his heart? Then, I had only him. I begged him desperately not to break our betrothal, but he spoke of not wanting to ruin my prospects. "Peyton, did you never understand what it meant to be a future wife? Or what it meant to be a future wife who had been taken in as a beggar?" I seemed to return to that rainy night 10 years ago, soaked through. My left shoulder screaming with pain, so weak, I could barely stand. Peyton appeared from nowhere to support me, his eyes still clear and sober. His eyes reflected my current wretched state. I wrapped my arms around his neck. Wine fumes hit his face, and he frowned almost imperceptibly but resisted pulling away. "Darling, tomorrow you should personally cut down this peach tree." Peyton looked surprised. I deliberately breathed more wine at him. "I don't like it." Peyton glanced toward the house at the disheveled, intoxicated men, his eyes narrowing, but he nodded in agreement. As time passed, I grew bored with my male favorites. Peyton's increasingly frail form also held no interest for me. I deliberately arranged for Peyton to enter government service. To pursue an official career, whether secretly or openly, numerous ministers criticized me. I pleaded with Mother, who studied me for a long time before finally relenting and agreeing to smooth Peyton's path. Peyton certainly wouldn't object. His days in government service were precious to him, often keeping him busy until the early hours of morning before returning home. I could see clearly that he was intentionally avoiding me. He must have changed tactics, unable to see his daughter through me. He would take another route. Peyton didn't disappoint me. In just 2 years, he had completely undermined my authority and become one of Father's favored officials. He began treating me as if I didn't exist, showing me no courtesy, no longer bothering to avoid me deliberately. Recently, he had frequently sent people to follow my personal guards. I knew he was preparing to act. He wanted to bring his daughter to live with him. How could I refuse such a request? I had my guards lead him to the outskirts of the city, to a lonely grave small and modest, dating back 2 years. For the first time, I witnessed Peyton become hysterical. He screamed at me like a madman. "Aurora, you venomous woman. Why couldn't you spare even an 8-year-old child?" I watched him calmly, coldly uttering a single sentence. "She died of poisoning. What does that have to do with me? Just as Alexander died in an accident. What did that have to do with you?" Peyton's face turned deathly pale as he collapsed to the ground, nearly breaking down completely. I stared down at him coldly, my nails already embedded in my palms. "Drawing blood, Peyton. In the end, you are the one who owes me. My Alexander was only 5 years old. The day he died, he was still holding your hand, happily calling you father. I couldn't believe you had the heart to let him fall to his death, destroying all my hopes completely. I had no way out left. Peyton never returned after that day. He wouldn't come to see me. And I was thoroughly bored. When I grew bored, I sought amusement for myself. I tired of my previous collection of favorites and began searching for new ones. Lysander, my newest acquisition, pleased me most of all. He possessed eyes identical to Peyton's, or rather, he resembled the Peyton of our past. The one who had grown up alongside me as childhood companions. Lysander's beauty surpassed even Peyton himself. His only flaw was a thin, barely noticeable scar on his left cheek. I wanted nothing more than to spend every night in revelry with him, drunk and forgetful of the world. Yet somehow my health had deteriorated severely. I coughed blood constantly. Within mere months, I had become gaunt and haggard. I used every connection at my disposal to force Peyton to return to the princess residence, even though I knew perfectly well that his return would only hasten my death. But what did it matter? Even if I died, I wouldn't let him live in peace. He and I were destined to torment each other through endless lifetimes. I coughed up another mouthful of blood. Lysander quickly pressed a handkerchief to my lips as blood soaked through the entire cloth instantly. Before he could offer false concern, I fixed him with a penetrating stare, seeing through all his schemes. "Lysander, get out of the princess residence and never let me see you again, or I'll ensure you die without a proper burial." He stood, tossed the handkerchief to the floor, and looked at me mockingly before walking away without a backward glance. He left me with a single curse, "Your Highness, I was merely doing a job for payment. Since things have come to this, let me offer you one final wish. May you lose everything you love and find no redemption." My fingers trembled as I tried to speak, but pain rendered me speechless. I regretted not having him cut to pieces when I had the chance. When Peyton returned, he didn't spare me a single glance. Heading straight to his study, he no longer needed to consider my feelings. I had nothing left with which to threaten him. For 3 full days, he didn't set foot in my chambers. Dragging my frail, emaciated body, I pushed open his study door. He held a painting in his hands, studying it intently. The portrait showed a woman, Sophia. His gaze held such tenderness, brimming with love, pity, regret, and guilt. When he looked at me, I saw only barely concealed disgust and hatred. I laughed softly, determined not to let him have peace. I rushed forward to tear the painting apart. I wanted Peyton's eyes and heart to hold only me. Unfortunately, my strength failed me, and he pushed me roughly to the ground. Despite my struggles, I couldn't rise, allowing Peyton to regard me with disgust for a long time. I smiled bitterly. "Peyton, have you ever, even for a moment, felt sorry for me?" His lips curved mockingly. What do you think, princess? It was a statement, not a question. I lowered my head with a sigh. It seemed he wouldn't help me up today. Peyton had long since lost patience. He carefully put away the painting. What does your highness require of me? His voice was cold and distant, painful to hear. Unable to stand, I remained sitting on the floor, looking up at him. Darling, when you die, will you be buried with Sophia? He said nothing. I continued speaking to myself. I am dying soon. After death, I'd like to rest beneath that peach tree in the Ashford estate. I smiled slightly. I wonder if that tree still stands. His eyes showed a moment of confusion, though his mouth still formed two words. Impossible. Finally, I could no longer hold on and vomited a large quantity of blood before losing consciousness. Before I fainted, Peyton's expression finally showed something different. I thought carefully. It looked like guilt. I searched and searched but still couldn't find any trace of heartache. How truly unsatisfying. When I awoke, Peyton stood beside the bed, looking down at me from his great height. His brow showed a long-absent sense of relief. I knew my time had come. I smiled weakly. Peyton, will you die with me? Peyton's face remained expressionless. You've completely lost your mind. I laughed maniacally, tears streaming down my face. Everyone says I am mad, but Peyton, do you know when I first went insane? He looked at me uncomprehendingly, his face full of mockery. I smiled gently. Peyton, the imperial astronomer prophesied that if I lived past 30, the nation would face great chaos. Even Mother doesn't want to keep me alive. I am giving you the chance to kill me personally. Aren't you delighted? Lysander had been his agent, and the poison in my body had been administered at his direction through Lysander. I had known all of this for some time. Not guarding against Lysander was giving him opportunity. Ensuring his successful career was providing him protection. I reached out toward him tremblingly, and this time he didn't refuse, allowing my withered, bark-like hand to grasp his. He looked at me, and perhaps finding me pitiable after hearing my words, reached out to wipe away the tears rolling down my cheeks. I grew angry. Why did he pity me? I looked at his waist and asked, "Could you return the jade pendant to me?" A tear fell as I spoke pitifully. This was a gift from Mother. I am about to die and want it beside me. Peyton removed the pendant and placed it by my pillow. My hand fell as I drew my last breath. He watched quietly, not moving. My death was too suspicious, and Peyton worked to cover it up, keeping it secret. He had personally avenged his daughter. With my death, he should have been at peace. But he didn't know he had avenged the wrong person. The one who administered poison had also mistakenly harmed the wrong person. How disappointing for Peyton. I wasn't dead. In the Great Hall, Lysander knelt in white robes, revealing to His Majesty the truth of how Princess Aurora had been murdered. When Peyton saw Lysander appear at morning court, he was both shocked and panicked. Father flew into a rage, immediately ordering Peyton to receive 50 lashes before further judgment. Before Peyton could make sense of everything, guards dragged him away and beat him until his flesh split open, and both legs were broken. My message arrived at precisely the right moment after Peyton lost consciousness, but before he died. When the messenger eunuch passed by Peyton carrying Mother's jade pendant, he had already collapsed unconscious. Unconsciousness was perfect. It saved us from unpleasant words. Father pondered for a moment before summoning Mother. The messenger said, "Princess Aurora asked this servant to say that she begs their majesties, in consideration of this jade pendant's significance, to spare the consort's life." Father and Mother exchanged glances, looking at the pendant in the eunuch's hands as if they too felt Peyton had been wronged. After a long pause, he slowly spoke. Our Princess Aurora was pure and kind-hearted, loving him to such extent. Very well. Our daughter's happiness comes first. Peyton's death sentence is commuted. Send him back to the princess residence to properly atone for his crimes. Mother added thoughtfully. Return that jade pendant to Princess Aurora. Sigh. Even without this pendant, I would have agreed to her request. Aurora has suffered enough. Acting had become truly exhausting work. When Peyton awoke, Lysander was massaging my temples and occasionally feeding me grapes. I stared at Peyton. He was someone you recruited, wasn't he? But did you know he was originally a favorite in my princess residence? The scar on his left cheek was one I had made with my nail guard in anger. His real name was Marcus. Peyton understood everything and said mockingly, Princess Aurora, you've played quite a game. This was the second time he'd said this to me. The first time we could still escape unscathed. Now that he said it again, he was already in hell. Peyton smiled bitterly. The victor takes all. I have nothing left to live for. He produced a dagger from somewhere and drew it across his throat. Lysander was quick to snatch it away. I flew into a rage, ordering men to bind his hands and gripping his face roughly. You have no right to seek death. Peyton showed no life in his eyes, no emotion whatsoever. I smiled viciously. Peyton, you live as my consort, and when you die, you'll be buried with me. His pupils moving beneath the lids but said nothing. I'll make you watch carefully, see what hell you inhabit, and I have long since passed beyond redemption. His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. What exactly do you love about me? I don't love you anymore. I hate you. Peyton couldn't suppress his laughter. I turned to look at him as he leaned weakly against the bed frame, laughing with wild abandon. Peyton, I was the little beggar you brought home. I told you long ago, your love is filthy to me, yet life-sustaining. He finally stopped laughing. His eyes filled with emotions too complex for me to decipher. Peyton's body had also been ravaged by the jade pendant's poison. Combined with the 50 lashes, he was barely clinging to life. I had people keep him alive by the thinnest thread. Peyton, don't you regret it too? Regret that your body wasn't stronger. Regret that you fainted at the wrong moment and couldn't expose my actions before the throne. Peyton had grown so thin he was barely recognizable, his eye sockets sunken like a ghoul's. Princess Aurora is quite the schemer. I laughed coldly and turned to leave. His skeletal fingers suddenly gripped me tightly. Your purpose. What is your ultimate purpose? I gazed out the window. My purpose. Originally, I only wanted you to be my obedient consort, give me a child, and save my life. But now everything has changed. Peyton released his grip in defeat. Why did it have to be me? Because only with you would Father believe I was dissolute and love-addled, with no interest in state affairs. Only by forcing you to bear me a child would our parents lower their guard and allow Alexander and me to leave. I said, you already owed me, didn't you? That day on the Ashford family street nearly cost me my life. Such a severe wound, such heavy rain, my life ebbing away drop by drop. Peyton closed his eyes, regretful and helpless, even his voice trembling. Aurora, back then, I didn't know you were so severely injured, nearly dying. Sophia probably didn't know either. I interrupted him. It doesn't matter anymore. Mother Ashford's ingratitude, Sophia's callous disregard, Peyton's cold indifference, they were all accomplices in killing that timid, weak girl who let others control her fate. Peyton wept openly. It was my fault. All my fault. I dug my nails into my palms, allowing no hint of softness. What lay between us now was far more than that broken engagement. Ministers, as you all know, my consort committed such grave errors that by law he should be executed. It is only my love and respect for him that spared him from punishment, but returning to government service is absolutely impossible. In the private room of a tea house, the assembled officials exchanged uncertain glances. These were all men Peyton had secretly cultivated and supported during his rise. They had assumed Father would naturally be suspicious and watchful of Peyton, that his apparent success was merely surface level without real power. Indeed, this proved true. The officials he had cultivated were all unremarkable minor functionaries. Only one proved useful, born to a military family, and investigation revealed his cousin was the current deputy commander of the Imperial Guard. Peyton truly hadn't disappointed me. Though these men held small positions, they weren't necessarily incapable of great things. I continued, "Gentlemen, Princess Aurora and my consort are of one heart. The path he would walk is the path I will walk. Those who stand with me will not find cause for disappointment." Princess Aurora speaks wisely. Having already taken this step, we might as well continue forward. Indeed, Princess Aurora's willingness to forgive the consort such enormous crimes shows her genuine feelings for Lord Peyton. She surely wouldn't harm him. I smiled success. Among them was Logan, wealthy and skilled at playing all sides, who had recently bungled an assignment from above. His colleagues and superiors had covered for him. Today he hosted a banquet at the restaurant with dozens of tables, where various officials brought friends, gathering nearly half the court. I took the opportunity to surround several of their residences. When Deputy Commander of the Imperial Guard Zachary led men into Father's chambers, news was just beginning to trickle from the palace to the restaurant. My trusted agents bound their family members and brought them forward. Only then did they become compliant. When I entered the palace, Mother had also been brought to Father's chambers. I looked at the blood-covered Zachary and smiled. "Well done." Our parents stared in shock. "It was you," I smiled. "Yes, it was me." I crouched before them, watching Father's dignity crumble inch by inch. How fascinating it was. I couldn't help but laugh. "Mother, stop looking. Evelyn won't be coming. She and her general husband are touring the southern provinces." Mother's pointing finger trembled. You planned this all along." Naturally. Mad woman, absolutely mad." I brushed off my robes and stood, looking down at them with perfect calm. "Mother, I went mad long ago. Mad from the Ashford family's heartless betrayal. Mad from your ruthless cruelty." I smiled sadly. "I never imagined that when you searched for me and brought me home, it was to kill me with your own hands." Father stared at me in shock. You knew everything." I smiled with exaggerated expression. "I wanted to be good, but you gave me no chance. When I wandered the streets and you found me, I was infinitely grateful. I personally made pastries for you, but what I overheard was your plot to murder me, your desire to watch me die with your own eyes." I looked at them, searching and searching, but found no trace of regret on their faces. Wiping tears from my face, I continued. "I thought if I appeared foolish and incompetent, with no interest in power struggles, you and Father wouldn't fear me. I played such an elaborate game, forcing Peyton to be my consort, bearing Alexander, all to make Father believe I was hopeless mud, a love-sick fool, thereby lowering his guard and permitting us to retire to the countryside. But my Alexander died. I demanded of Mother. After Alexander died, I had to die too, didn't I? I still harbored illusions. But I never expected you would drive me to complete destruction. That jade pendant, you must have spent considerable effort on it. Colorless, odorless, deeply toxic." I crouched to look at Mother as she looked back at me, not shedding a single tear. I turned to Father. "Father, I was once deceived by you, thinking Peyton had killed Alexander. But Father, the guards at the hunting preserve were personally sent by you to protect Alexander's safety. Without your authorization, how would they dare let Peyton take Alexander into the inner hunting grounds? The day before, you had agreed to my request for retirement, permitting me to take Alexander from the residence and never return to the capital. The very next day, you heartlessly killed him. What grieves me most is that you and Mother never intended to let me live. You are my father." Ha 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 ha. Everything I've done was because you forced me to it. I turned and saw a mirror reflecting my mad appearance, my eyes filled with hatred and unwillingness. I wiped away a tear that didn't exist from the corner of my eye. The imperial astronomer prophesied that if I lived past 30, the nation would face great chaos. Tomorrow is my 30th birthday, but forgive me, I still want to live. I turned away without another glance at them. Since father and mother are so devoted to each other, spend your remaining years together in the cold palace. On my 30th birthday, the celebration was magnificent. With universal rejoicing, whether they wished it or not, all had to bow before me. My gaze swept over my royal brothers, who lowered their eyes in trembling fear. Finally, my attention settled on a young boy. That day, Evelyn hurried back to celebrate my birthday. Learning that I had imprisoned her parents in the cold palace, she remained remarkably calm. Soon, her husband would depart for frontier duty. She told me the frontier was harsh and cold, and she was unwilling to accompany him. I studied her carefully but said nothing in the end. I elevated the child of Consort Lee to the throne. At 9 years old, his name was Jasper, and among all the children, he loved me most. After his enthronement, he named me Protector Princess, second only to the Emperor himself. On coronation day, as officials bowed, I took his hand and walked past rows of ministers toward the dragon throne that symbolized supreme power. Evelyn burst in from outside the hall and plunged a dagger into my lower back. I turned to see her self-reproachful, yet obsessive eyes and her hand trembling as she gripped the blade. I clutched Jasper tightly. He should understand my meaning. When I awoke, Jasper sat by my bedside, tears in his eyes. "Sister, you are finally awake." My voice was hoarse beyond recognition. "Where is Evelyn?" "I've confined her to her chambers, awaiting your judgment," I spoke softly. "Send her to the frontier. The frontier is harsh and cold. Let her never return." Yes, the young emperor was still a child. My supporters formed the vast majority at court, so state power effectively rested in my hands. Fate truly was mysterious. After all these twists and turns, the prophecy came true after all. I ordered Peyton brought from the princess residence to the palace. His legs had been healed by physicians I'd summoned, and now he walked slowly toward me under guard escort. Lysander beside me mocked, "Aurora, I am truly afraid I'll meet the same fate someday." I chuckled naturally. I would never treat him as I had Peyton, that rainy night years ago, if he hadn't rescued me. How could I have survived to this day? I spoke seriously to him. "Lysander, you were never truly my favorite, and I always intended to let you go." I reached to touch the scar on his left cheek, but ultimately lowered my hand. "From now on, whatever path you choose, I'll ensure you prosper and remain safe." Lysander looked at me silently. I had Peyton taken to Splendor Hall. When I visited him, he sat dejectedly on the bed's edge, his long hair disheveled. His feet were bound with iron chains, no longer resembling the graceful gentleman of former days. Walking feet paired with chains made the perfect combination. I smiled coldly. My consort should pay more attention to his appearance. He looked up at me, his voice hoarse. "The worse I look, the more pleased your highness must be, isn't that right?" I laughed softly, lifting his chin with a handkerchief while deliberately mentioning Sophia. "Peyton, tell me, if Sophia saw you in this state, would she still scheme and deceive to win you over? For 2 whole years, why did you only recover your memory after falling in love with her?" A hot tear fell onto my hand, startling me momentarily. Crocodile tears. He spoke through tears. "Penelope, back then I didn't know you were so severely wounded, nearly dying. One life, one attempted murder. And he thought a single tear could resolve it all." I coldly withdrew my hand, watching him expressionlessly as I dropped the handkerchief onto his lap. He stared at it, lost in thought. I turned away, resuming my usual smile. "Peyton, it is all right. Don't be sad, even if Sophia no longer loves you. I will love you always and forever. I'll send the world's finest things to Splendor Hall, and even after your death, Splendor Hall will remain yours." He could no longer maintain his pretense, his eyes burning with hatred enough to kill me. Too bad for him. Once I closed the doors of Splendor Hall, endless darkness would devour him first. After closing the door, I walked out of Splendor Hall where Lysander waited. "Why haven't you left yet? I've grown skilled at being a substitute, understanding your highness's ways thoroughly. Why should I leave? Previously, you could serve as a substitute hereafter. Aren't you afraid I'll fly into a rage and take it out on you?" He smiled at me. "Haven't you done that enough already?" I wouldn't probe the truth behind his words anymore. He was intelligent, handsome, and pragmatic. With someone like him beside me, my remaining years would never be boring. 3 years after Jasper's enthronement, he still respected me deeply. So for now, I shelved plans to move against Empress Dowager Li. I didn't want Jasper to hate me and eventually plot my death. This life had come too dearly. If I could live peacefully, I preferred to avoid further conflict. Peyton lasted less than 4 years in Splendor Hall before dying of depression. The day he went to apologize to Alexander in the afterlife, the peach blossoms bloomed most brilliantly. I buried him right there in Splendor Hall, confining him forever within those 4 walls. Aurora's epilogue. Oh, Peyton, my dear Peyton. At first, I thought you might not love me, but I never imagined you would despise me so completely. Your wife died in childbirth. I played no part in that, nor did I mistreat your daughter. I only needed you to be my consort. Even without love, you could have helped me. But I never expected your absolute refusal. My methods were despicable. I used little Lily to force you. I considered defending myself, but I dared not gamble on whether you would still trust me in such circumstances. My fate was cursed, bearing monstrous sins. I only wanted to live. Was that so wrong? Or parents secretly investigated everything about me, including the Ashford family. They knew I was your future wife, that we had grown up together. After their plan succeeded, they wouldn't have spared the Ashfords either. You married another while I harbored resentment. That piercing wound on my left shoulder made me wish for death. I hated you, resented you, wanted nothing more than to trap you by my side. Do I still love you? No, it is hatred now. But without love, how could there be such hatred? Being tormented daily nearly drove me to complete madness. But what truly pushed me over the edge was my day of entering the palace. His current majesty and the Empress, my birth parents, wanted to kill me because of a prophecy. Peyton, do you know? They searched heaven and earth to find me, only to murder me before my 30th birthday. Your betrayal combined with this cruel truth left me clawing at my bones and scratching at my heart in agony day and night, so I devised a scheme. When it succeeded, your solitary suffering would spare the Ashford family and preserve my life. Why you specifically? Because I was your future wife. My selfishness, depravity, and dissolute behavior, only with you as my consort would father believe I was a simple-minded, romantic fool. If only you had cooperated. Dispelling our parents' fear and suspicion, I could have petitioned for retirement to live as a devoted wife and mother. Even farming in the countryside for life, abandoning the royal surname, anything, as long as they let me live. But you killed my Alexander. He was my child, my hope. Since you killed him, I wouldn't spare your little Lily either. But I never expected that before I could act, she would fall gravely ill beyond all help. I concealed the news, not letting you know. I was deliberately tormenting you. Later, following the trail, I discovered the cause of her death. It was that sachet, the only gift my mother had ever given me. I had passed it to you. Little Lily touched it for just a moment and was gone. Ha 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 ha. So they never intended to give me a chance. From beginning to end, they never meant for me to live. And you. You were the same. Lysander was your arrangement. I knew from early on, thinking I had killed little Lily. You never stopped wanting to murder me. I watched Lysander's every move. My health deteriorated daily as I coughed up blood. Finally, you returned. This was one of the rare times you came to the princess residence after entering government service. Yet you wouldn't speak a kind word to me. You'll never know how many favors I traded in secret, how many kind words I spoke on your behalf to advance your career. Using mother's guilt, I elevated you rapidly. In just 3 years you had power to rival mine. Do you know that the moment I died, all that power would vanish like smoke? It was time to close the net. Consort Peyton Ashford murdered the princess and killed his own son. He should have been executed by slow torture. It was I who loved and valued you enough to save your life. All your supporters became mine, giving me the strength to fight. Yet our parents never once apologized to me. And you, Peyton, never did either. I did nothing wrong. If given another chance, I would still choose you as my consort. If I lived, the Ashfords lived. If I died when father saw you newly risen to power, he would remember me. His inauspicious princess. Do you think you, your daughter, and the dozens of Ashford family members could survive much longer? This too was what you owed me, and I would never again be naive enough to bear your children. I would still advance your career, still give you fighting power. If you succeeded, my death wouldn't be in vain. If you failed, your forces would fall to me, giving me strength to fight. I would tell you everything, then magnanimously spare you for saving my life. Unfortunately, Peyton, there are no second chances, and you deserved everything you got. Evelyn's epilogue, Aurora. I never truly disliked you. After years apart, I wanted to grow close to you, but your cold nature left me uncertain how to approach. That day in the great hall when father had us choose consorts. Father favored the Lye family, so naturally I would choose the Lye heir. But seeing you there, I was willing to give you Lord Lye and choose the less favored general instead. I assumed that given your nature, you would choose Lord Lye without hesitation. After all, while we appeared to choose husbands, we were really choosing our status. Who could have known you couldn't forget that Peyton from the fallen Ashford house, insisting on marrying a widower? I scolded you in frustration, not noticing our parents' scrutinizing gazes fixed on you throughout. You had no interest in imperial power or profit, yet that astronomer's prophecy hung over our parents like a mountain, crushing what should have been your beautiful, happy life. I only learned too late, so late that the chasm between us had become impossible to bridge. I stabbed you, yet you spared me, letting me reunite with my husband. Aurora, your sister, was wrong. If I had another chance, I wouldn't have aimed that blade at you. I would have charged into Splendor Hall without hesitation and killed Peyton instead. When I turned 50, my husband died in battle, leaving me a widow with nowhere to turn. On my birthday, few came to visit. Only you, the magnificent protector princess, sent gifts with great fanfare. When I opened the box, my hands trembled uncontrollably. In the center of the sandalwood box lay an immunity medallion. I understood your meaning. I mounted my horse and rode openly into the capital. Learning of my approach, you summoned me to the palace. Eunuch Wang had even prepared torture devices, expecting the protector princess's fury to end my life. He never imagined I would emerge safely from your palace. I placed the immunity medallion in your hands and fell into your embrace. Your sister feels endless guilt toward you. Thank you for still being willing to see me. You remained unchanged. Though we were both in our 40s or 50s, you looked much younger than me. Lysander stood beside you. You told me, Evelyn, you are still a princess, still Jasper's sister, still the former emperor's daughter. Though I've allowed your return, I won't interfere with your choices. I understood. You meant I could pay respects at our parents' tomb. You remained as distant as ever. Yet, I only wanted to be close to you.